Hi, I'm GIRLI. I am a singer-songwriter from London. Although singer-songwriter, I feel like makes me sound like I'm going to be like the female Ed Sheeran, which I'm like definitely not.
Yeah. It's very euphoric pop.
I know. Yeah, it's more of a alternative indie pop vibe.
Yeah. Asking artists to describe their own music is cruel.
Horrendous. No, it's a disgusting question. But yeah, I think that's how I would describe it. Alternative. It's getting angrier every album as well. So, yeah. And pop, alternative music.
You've just collaborated with one of our former podcast guests,
Yes,
Eliza from Cheer Up Luv.
Mm-hmm.
How did that collaboration come about, and what can people expect from the video if they've not seen it yet?
So I've known Eliza for a while, and I've been following Cheer Up Luv for a while, and I love the content she puts out. And when I wrote the song Slap on the Wrist, which is about the justice system letting down survivors of sexual assault and the sort of systematic way that we dismiss victims in society, I just instantly thought of her photo project that she started Cheer Up Luv with, which was she would photograph women in places that they had been assaulted. And it was like this really beautiful and harrowing and powerful kind of photo series, because it was these women having the guts to go back to somewhere that was really traumatic and say, you know, I want to reclaim this space. But it was also amazing because it highlighted that, you know, sexual harassment and assault doesn't just happen down a dark alleyway by like a masked man with a knife. You know, it happens every day in normal places. Yeah, places that you should be safe. I mean, you know, everywhere should be safe for everybody, but, you know, in the day, at work, pushing your baby in a pram, you know. And I just loved the concept of that photo series. And I messaged her, I was like, would you be down to direct a video version of this, basically? And because the internet can be ruthless, we were like, okay, we're not going to actually have real survivors in the video. We'll get actors to sort of stand in for them, but we will collect real testimonies of you know, experiences, and we'll kind of put together a list. So Eliza collected loads of testimonies through the Cheer Up Luv Instagram, and we, you know, they were all anonymous, and we had a look through, and we were like, okay, a lot of people say they've experienced harassment at work, in the office. They've experienced it at home, because, you know, the other thing is most of the time it is someone you know, actually. They've experienced it walking in the park. They've experienced it going for a run. They've experienced it at the pub with their friends. So we kind of put all these locations together and yeah, went out and shot these kind of stills in these places. And we worked with Rape Crisis UK and Ireland, and they provided us with some statistics. And so we kind of made this, I guess, sort of, yeah, documentary style video that was like a pure kind of collaboration. And yeah, I'm so proud of it. And it is like the dream combo for me of like music and creativity and then activism as well. So
no, it was really powerful. And when it popped up, I was like, yes, someone has, because like I loved what Kate Nash did last year with the statistics.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so good.
Around trans rights.
Yeah,
and
she's so inspiring.
The amount of like this podcast has become much more political. Like minutes before you came in, I was just chatting to Gazelle Twin about boycotting King's Place because Lockheed Martin were one of the sponsors, and like we've talked about how things are funded, how things are not funded, but looking at things like accountability in the industry is really challenging, because obviously there's libel laws and things we can and can't say if we can't prove them, but the statistics are undeniable, like the low levels of convictions, the like consistent stories around the police, like a friend of mine, Nina Creswell, is currently suing the police in up north because she also managed to change the law with a good law project so that she could publicly name her abuser.
Wow.
And that changed the precedent because it was in the public interest, because he was a tattoo artist, if I remember right. So he would constantly have access to, so it's like, that's a really big shift. And I think that like Patsy Stevenson speaks really powerfully about how bad the police are in many different circumstances. And I think that the data itself is much harder to argue with than any individual anecdote, any male supremacist translation of like, well, this woman might have been lying and what was she wearing, and all those nonsense things that people say. And I think it was just really powerful to see it like pop up on my feed. And I knew you were already involved in the campaign with youth music, which is why I'd already asked whether you were free to pop on the podcast. And I think that I'd be really curious, as a musician growing up, did you see other people doing this that sort of gave you a bit of a blueprint?
I definitely was really inspired by artists who were outspoken and who were unafraid to be themselves. I mean, I grew up listening to Amy Winehouse, who was your classic, you know, in quotation marks, loud woman. You know, she really had no fear. I listened to a lot of Lily Allen, another artist who, again, was gobby in the best way. And, you know, Kate Nash, actually, that we've mentioned, you know, I was listening to her first album. And MIA was another artist I was listening to a lot, who, again, has always been really political. And actually, the other day, something popped up on my feed of Sinead O'Connor, which, like, she was in her heyday. I was not born yet, but I remember being so inspired by her and her story because, you know, she paved the way. I mean, she basically committed career suicide by calling out the
Catholic
Pope,
Church,
right? The Catholic Church, and in a time where like artists were just not being political unless it was something that felt really friendly political, or like palatable, like, you know, oh, I'm supporting this charity for, you know, hungry children. It's like, oh, that's okay. But, you know, if it's calling out sexual abuse within the church, it's like, get back in your place, you know. And I mean,
yeah, there's a certain level I think you can go to with a lot of protests before people are like, no, you've gone too far.
yeah,
And it's like,
right.
and it's actually because it's starting to resonate and it's starting to cut through, and you're starting to speak truth to power rather than speaking truth to people that don't have power or perceived power. And I think that's a really, because I think it's interesting with the data, because I've seen a lot of the stats that you've put out, and like I've also seen the campaigns around all of the like the Stop the Boats Brigade talking about the kind of like levels of sexual abuse from people that are immigrants and things like that. And you're like, the percentages are so like percentages versus the person that you're more likely to live with or be your teacher or be your priest, or it's like the data is but the data shows a system, and I think the system people don't quite understand, and it's I think it's really powerful to lay it out as starkly as you did, whilst also having a song that people can
bab to. Yeah, I mean, it's so like it's textbook, that whole thing of you know, I'm reading this book called How to Kill a Witch, a guide for the patriarchy, which is a book about the women who were accused of witchcraft in Scotland, specifically Scotland, in, you know, the 1600s. And it makes this point where it's like, time and time again, history repeats itself, where those in power will find a minority to scapegoat and tell everybody, look, all your problems are because of this group of people, so we're going to silence and eradicate them, and then everything will be good again. And it's to redirect the attention away from the fact that it's those in power with privilege who are actually ruining your lives. You know, it's like they're the ones hoarding the wealth. They're the ones, you know, they're the reason that the prices of milk are going up, you know, not the person who came to this country running away from war who just wants to like be a member of society. It's like, you know.
It's why the Rupert Murdoch cookie meme is so powerful.
I haven't seen that.
So he's sat there and there's a guy with a cookie in front of him and it's like, this guy wants your cookie, and behind him are loads and loads of cookies.
Oh my God, yeah.
And it's such a simple meme. And it's like, I think for a lot of people, it's like, I keep seeing it shared and you're like, okay, you've finally got it.
Yeah,
because it's
right.
such a penny drop thing to see it so viscerally.
Totally.
I realize I'm not asking questions and making statements, but I think that's the interesting thing about when you lay out data. It provokes people to pay attention to the information, and I think that we live in a information age, but actually there's a low level of knowledge and understanding, and I think that if you can nudge those things out there whilst also making music that you're proud of, like that's a big thing for an artist to do. And I hope that other people look at what you're doing and go, why aren't I doing that?
Oh,
like
thank you.
Joining those dots I think is really important.
Yeah.
So you're working with youth music on a report called Just the Way It Is, which is a provocative question. What did you discover that you didn't know about music from kind of reading that report?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I didn't discover much that's new to me as an artist, because I was like, oh yeah, all of this is painfully relatable.
Is it just the way it is?
No, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think that's such a clever title, because it's that thing of the amount of people who brush something off as, well, that's always the way it's been, is the reason things stay stuck in this, you know, dysfunctional way, is by saying, well, the music industry's always been corrupt, dangerous, you know, only for the privileged. So whatever, what's the point in changing it? It's like, well, the point is that so many people are suffering. Why would you not want to change that?
How did you end up working with youth music on the campaign?
I think, I mean, I saw that they were doing this campaign. They were putting together this report, and it was just all, I mean, about stuff I've spoken really openly about in the past.
Could you give people the kind of top level of what the report is before we talk about it a bit more?
Yes. So the report is about experiences that young people have had in the music industry, to do with discrimination, to do with unfair pay, to do with you know, long working hours and issues around safety, and it's basically sets out all of the things that are wrong in you know, how this industry operates for young people coming in and you know, starting out, and I really related to that, because you know, I started in the industry when I was 17 and was so naive, obviously, because I was a teenager and you know, had so many things. Now looking back, I'm like, my God, I was like really exploited there, or you know, I really should have been explained to what this contract is, and you know, I shouldn't have been put in that room late at night in the studio with some random producer I'd never met, and you know, it's like safeguarding things. And the report is called Just the Way It Is ? Because that's something I think it's a tale as old as time, of like, oh, it's always been that way.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's right.
If you applied that to evolution, we would all still be in the sea. So
yeah, so true.
Like,
we'll be little fish.
The music, like I've worked in the music industry since I was 16. I worked in a record shop, in a venue, and then I started drowning sound when I was 16, 17.
Oh my God,
when I was doing my GCSEs and stuff. And I've seen the various eras of people calling things out, people saying things are going to change, hearing the most disgusting stories, being involved in a stalking protection order,
really?
like
Gosh.
knowing that the industry does not have a way of self-regulating, because it's still freelancers, it's still people that enter into it when they're 17, who don't know what the industry's like, who are told, well, that's just the way things are. Like, the industry hasn't, for all the noise, for all of the stuff that happened with Me Too, like there hasn't been a Me Too moment in music, really.
No.
And there hasn't really been changes. Like, yes, there are changes. Yes, there's more visibility of women, but there's also now more people in the industry than ever. Like,
yeah, it's true.
there's less money than ever, which makes things more precarious and makes the things that people will tolerate, like the barriers of those things shift, and the power and manipulation that comes from that. It's like they're all really, like, when you're not financially stable in a like being in with a producer, and it's like it's either you're spending £500 of your own money or they're doing you a favor by letting you have the studio for the day or something, and it's like all of those things are the tale as old as time.
Totally. And it's true. It's like, you know, it's like the Wild West. There's no, you know, when there's no, especially if you're an independent artist, you know, it's like, where's the HR department, you know, like there needs to be more put in place to support, especially, you know, young people. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of initiatives. And I think the thing that struck me when I read this report and some of its findings was just how much it sparked people to urgency. And I think also if it can make younger people aware, like, this isn't normal. Like, these things are bad and they're bad at a scale, but they're not normal. Like, what did you think when you first saw the sort of data points and things? Was there anything that stood out to you?
Unfortunately, I wasn't surprised, because I know from my experiences, from all of my friends in the industry, that like there are deep-seated issues with and you know, I don't know one artist who hasn't experienced either being paid unfairly, being blindsided legally, you know, cheated with a contract, or being trapped in a deal they don't want to be, or you know, being in an uncomfortable situation and they're scared to be blacklisted. You know, that was a big thing that came up in the report, which is so true.
As if people are interconnected enough that you could blacklist anyone, it would make any difference.
Right.
But people think the industry is much more connected than it is.
Right. And especially when you're young, you know, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like if I speak out about this thing that's happened to me, and then that person tells that person, then my career's over, you know, because you think that, you know, you think, oh my God, this is my only way in, kind of thing. And you know, there needs to be so much more support for people to be like, no, I can call out bad behavior and my career is fine. It's going to be fine because I know I have this support network, or I can go and get this grant, or I can, you know, I don't need to rely on this one channel of income or connect or whatever.
You touched on something I was just about to ask, the support networks. Have you found in speaking and being honest and being your true self and calling people out when you need to, have you found that you've gravitated to groups and organizations and people that can provide that support?
I think, well, definitely being an artist who speaks out more online and in my music, I've definitely found that my fans are an amazing, you know, source of validation for what I'm going through, and I can connect with people. And I guess through that, you know, I also have met other artists who are experiencing similar things, who will reach out and say, I saw that you posted about this happening to you, that happened to me. And, you know, that's a really amazing network. But in terms of, you know, and I know there are some really amazing charities in the industry who do offer support. For me, you know, a big thing I've experienced is the mental health struggles that can really easily come up if you're, you know, it makes sense if you're an artist and then you're financially struggling, and then you're also like in this really big confusing industry, and it's a real roller coaster. There's a lot of ups and downs. Sometimes you can be doing really well and then you can suddenly not be, and you know, that's really hard mentally.
You must have done some big shows and then the next day found yourself in Co-op.
Well, right.
Looking for milk or something.
Yeah, and been like, what? You know? So I think, you know, for me, I was kind of lucky in that I was able to have my own support network. You know, I can pay for therapy. I have a supportive family. I have supportive partner and friends. But, you know, there are so many artists who don't have any of those things.
Yeah.
And especially if you're an artist starting out and you're, you know, you don't come from money, you don't have, you know, a label deal yet, or you don't have any kind of financial, you know, any investment. I'm not surprised that so many people would just go, I can't do this. I actually, like, mentally, physically, you know, become discouraged really quickly. And that's such a shame, and also has an impact on, you know, the percentage of artists who are, for example, from working class backgrounds versus middle and upper class backgrounds. And it becomes this really lopsided thing of, well, do the amount of artists, does the makeup of the artists actually represent all of the people who want to be doing this? Or it's just the people who can afford to, you know.
I now wonder how many of my episodes of this podcast you listen to, because we talk about that a lot.
Really? Yeah. There you go.
And I think that in amongst all of those things, you often hear that, like, oh, they just weren't cut out for it, and all those. It's like,
right.
If someone is going through a lot of the things you just talked about, but they don't have the money to access support, like, there are organizations like Help Musicians and Music Minds Matter that people can call and get support if they're musicians. I know that on the youth music site, there's long lists of different resources, and like lots of people have got good at compiling the resources. I worked on a project with someone called We Are the Music, and all it does is lists all the different places to go if you're experiencing harassment and abuse.
That's amazing.
And because it never actually been compiled anywhere.
Wow.
And the most interesting thing was the UN and the Musicians Union had a really similar campaign with the same name, and they didn't know that the two campaigns existed. And it's like, so there's a lot of willing out there to make things better, but it doesn't feel like, again, things aren't as connected as they could be. And I think the very piecemeal, fragmented way the industry works, often things flow through the media. So like, I've spotted stuff because I've had press releases about 4 different campaigns, and I search my inbox and I'm like, oh, this is the same campaign, but
it's that one. Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot of willing for things to change.
Hi there, it's Emma here. I'm gatecrashing the podcast to quickly tell you about the Drowned in Sound newsletter. Every Wednesday, I invite myself into your inbox, with permission, of course, to share opinion writing and resources, tell you about cool things that you should be involved in within the world of music, activism, etc. I also bring track of the week and a little bit of hopeful news for you, because we all know that the news cycle can be grim at the best of times. Drowned in Sound newsletter every Wednesday in your inbox. Sign up now.
So in terms of the kind of safety in the industry, what are some of the things that could be improved? Like, you don't have to say stuff that's happened to you, but like, what do you think would be some of the big things that you think would be beneficial to change?
I think safeguarding is so huge, especially for young artists, especially young artists from, you know, who are marginalized backgrounds or minorities. You know, I mean, I remember being an 18-year-old girl and, you know, being sent to LA on my own to go do 2 weeks of, you know, writing. And it was just like, well, I don't know anyone here. I'm on my own. Like, this is the first time I've been to...
Could you drive? Because
I couldn't drive yet. I, like, wasn't even old enough to, like, go...
You could go to the drink.
Couldn't go
to a gig. Like, most gigs are over 21.
Most gigs are over 21. And I remember it was so isolating. And, you know, I remember having a situation where I went to a gig and I got in, and it was like a friend's gig, but then I couldn't go to the after party because I wasn't old enough. So then I didn't know LA at all.
Yeah.
So I was like,
I think it's a pretty unknowable city, even if you...
Well, right. And I was like, well, I'll just walk back to my Airbnb. It's only like 15 minutes. And I got followed home by some guy in a car because no one had told me, don't walk, this is a bad area. Like, and I remember being so
Also,
scared.
no one walks.
No one walks. Yeah, I'm from London. I was like, I'll walk. And, I remember calling my manager because I was like, who do I call about this? I was like, I'm so scared. And like, I should have been chaperoned, or I should have like had someone looking out for me. I should have, had been provided with a driver, because my publisher was paying for it. So it was all this stuff.
And the publisher probably had 15 artists, probably similar age to you, that live in LA.
Right. They could have like connected me with.
Taking you out for lunch and
totally.
like the amount of times because I've managed musicians as well, and the safeguarding element is always something that's like, even basic things like outside of recording studios, they're not being lights. So it's like, it's dark at that studio. Do you want me to come meet you from the studio? Like, or do you have a friend that can pick you up? Like all those, like, because sometimes the artist wouldn't even think to ask, because why would you?
Why would you? You don't know. Yeah,
you're a young person in your power writing great songs. Like you've
exactly.
So it's like having safeguarding built into, and I think that some of the training the Music Managers Forum does now, I imagine elements like that have kind of creeped in of basic things that most people should think about.
Yeah, like if you've signed a teenager who like does not have the worldly experience to know about,
well, you've probably got enough experience to know to put the keys in your hands.
Right, exactly. But like, I mean, you just have no idea about how to be safe somewhere. And also, luckily, I never had an experience like this myself, but I know so many young female artists who have experienced harassment and assault because they're somewhere in a different country, or they're somewhere they don't know, and they go to a studio and there's just some producer guy and you're alone with this person, and it's like you're so vulnerable. And I think,
and also to get the best out of your work, you sort of need to be vulnerable in those spaces, or you need to be emotionally open, and and often you've got slightly socially awkward, weird men who misjudge the fact that they've probably worked with 300 artists and 2 of them have been women.
Oh my God, completely.
And you've turned up and you're like, you're trying to be yourself, showing up to make your music. And I think that's one of the big things that the anchoress who I work with has done lots of training to get more women into studios, because she's part of a group called 2% and Rising, because that's how few producers and studio staff are women, and like those are barriers that shouldn't be, because you've made music, you've like you know what productions are all about, and it's like there should be way more women in studios. And
definitely
we're in Shaw's studio today, and a few times when I've been in here, they have like the Women in Audio group come in and do their training sessions and things. And I think that the changes that I'm seeing in the industry is that upskilling. It is there are way too many average men working in studios.
Fully, because it's just so much more accessible and encouraged. And, it's the same with touring. It's like, if you're a woman sound engineer or tour manager, or, most of all of my tours, all my crew are women. And because for me, I'm just like, I love working with women, and like, I have some amazing like people who work on my team, and my tour manager is this incredible woman who is very short. She's under 5 foot and very feminine. And it's so crazy the amount of times that we have walked in to a venue and been talked down to, patronized, had things mansplained to us, been just outwardly disrespected, and then maybe like the support band will come and they have a male tour manager, and then he gets a normal treatment. And it's like, what? Like, no, this is our tour, like this is our, like, treat us with respect, and it kind of became,
also respect should just be the basic for everyone,
the baseline.
There is a male supremacy thing that, again, I think Laura Murray from Blood Red Shoes talked about this a long time ago. Like, they walked off stage and she was stopped from going into the dressing room because they thought she was a groupie.
Oh my
She's just been
God.
performing like a headline show to like 1,000 people. She has a bouncer stopping her going into her own dressing room.
Oh, literally the worst.
And like
yeah.
that is the assumption that
You're not important. Yeah. Yeah.
like
exactly.
I've been into guitar shops with artists that are about to go and do like arena tours and you're like, why are you talking to me? I don't play guitar.
Right. Oh my God, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I saw this this meme that was like, it was like, oh, they should enforce like a women-only hour at Guitar Center every day, so you can just go and like play the instruments and not be like
I'm
talked
laughing
at.
because it's bleak.
No, it's literally
Yeah.
so bleak, but so
Yeah.
true. I mean, like the amount of times I've been, you know, I mean, it's interesting. Like my drummer. I have a drummer in the US and a drummer in the UK, and they're both women, incredible drummers. And, you know, my drummer in the US has been drumming since she was like 5 years old, so almost 30 years. And the amount of shows that we've done where she has a sound tech explain how to set up her kit, and she's like, "This is my kit.
Yeah.
Like, I know what I'm doing here. I'm good." Like. And it's just that sort of assumption that you're inept. That it's a microaggression. It really gets you down because then you're just like, oh my God, like, you know, why do I have to work twice, 3 times as hard just to sort of be on the same level of just, basic respect as a male musician?
So improvements, training for people that work in venues, like
Yes, literally.
basic respect.
How to talk to women without being a fucking idiot.
I do wonder if most men, rather than driving lessons, they need a how to speak to women lessons.
Yeah, 1,000,000,000%. Yeah.
This episode of the Drown in Sound podcast is presented in partnership with Qobuz, the platform that pays artists 4 times more than the industry standard, that has high quality audio, that has human curation, which as a human curator is something that I truly value over the kind of algo slop that you get on some platforms. You can really hear the difference. I know lots of places talk about the audio qualities, and as soon as I moved across, it sort of felt like I was rediscovering music, which is one of the platform's slogans. If you're worried about your playlists, you can use Soundiz. It's a really good tool that's part of the sign-up process when you join Qobuz. It just transfers everything across. If you'd like a free trial of this platform that's independently owned and made for music enthusiasts, head to drownedinsound.org/playlists, where you can hear not only our playlists, but get a free trial. You can also find these details in the show notes to this episode. And now, back to this episode of the Drown in Sound podcast, brought to you in partnership with Qobuz. So if you had £500 million, it's a ridiculous sum of money, how would you improve the music industry?
I would give as many unsigned artists as you can fit into 500 million living wage for 2 years, because I think that is it's that first like starting out period where if you don't have money from family, or you know, you don't have a family who live in a city that you can just kind of crash with rent free, or if, you know, the amount of artists who have to work 2-3 other jobs just to support funding their own project, and the energy that takes out of you. And a lot of them can't even afford to do that. And so they just end up never putting that art out into the world. And that's like such a tragedy, because it shouldn't be just well-off artists who get to release music and get a foot in the door. It should be everybody.
What do you think of what they're doing in Ireland with the like universal basic income for artists?
It's amazing. It's so amazing. I mean, I also have friends in Denmark, and they In Denmark, they also do a similar thing, I think. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I think there's a lot of grants that they give out. And they also have so many government paid things. Like there's a studio in London, in Islington, I think, that is just for Danish artists, and they can apply in Denmark and get it, and then they can just come and have this free studio, and it's an accommodation, and they can do sessions for a couple of weeks. And, you know, because I think when you invest in art, it's incredible for society, you know, it's essential. And yeah, it's such a letdown how little the UK government care about music and the arts.
And was that one of the things that drew you to working with an organisation like Youth Music? Because obviously they do a lot of finding pots of money and putting it in places to make sure it's every penny spent well.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. You know, I think the more opportunities, you know, if it's basically a thing of like, okay, well, if the government aren't going to step up and do it with all of the billions of pounds of tax money that I'm sure is going to places like weaponry.
Yeah.
So fun. Instead of supporting the arts, then, you know, having organizations like Youth Music provide opportunities for people to apply for grants and actually, you know, be able to just live off their art, you know. I mean, that's the contribution to society from, you know, a happy artist who is priceless, you know. And
what's given you this different perspective? Because a lot of people in the industry they pull up the drawbridge behind them. Like, what did you get certain support, or was there something that made you think, or if it's just like, I've entered in this thing, it's such a mess, how can I make it better?
I think definitely because I've had such a like rough ride at times. I think I was signed very young. I was still a teenager to a major label, and I was given loads of money and loads of investment, but also really kind of my naivety was exploited, and I was really used, you know, I was really molded into sort of something that was meant to be more commercial and, you know, less. I've always been a very punk artist. And then when that didn't get the #1 hit that the label wanted, I was like completely just left and deserted by an entire team. And by that point, I was still only like 21. And
that level of rejection is quite hard to deal with.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it's like, you know, I'm still dealing with the trauma of all that rejection and the lack of compassion that was shown to me, and the lack of support, mental health support. I mean, I got a phone call from the person who had signed me at the label just saying, yeah, you're dropped. Bye. And it was like, that was it. That there was no, you know, follow up. Okay, how are you going to be okay? Do you want to speak to anyone about this? Do you want, you know, are you financially okay? You know, and for me, like, I'm
not even like, here's some stories of people that got dropped and had successful careers.
Right,
like,
nothing.
This
it's
might
like,
be the best thing that happened to you. Like,
it was like, you're on your own. We don't care. We don't give a shit about you.
Yeah.
And, you know, luckily I grew up in London, so my parents still lived in London at the time, so I could move back home and still be in a city where lots of opportunities are. So many artists have to pack up their things and go back to the tiny town that they're from where there's nothing, you know, going on. And again, you know, luckily I had mental health support, but like, I think it's that thing of, I know that if I hadn't had those things, it could have been, and it was a really dark time, but it could have been even worse. So I think it's so important that for people who, you know, don't have the same things that I was lucky enough to have as a kind of like parachute, that there's places they can seek that support.
So is there any other ways you want to spend your 500 million? Are you quite happy with giving it to artists. I feel like that is the best way of spending it some ways.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, you know, I'm really, really passionate about there being support specifically for people who have experienced, you know, harassment and assault and grooming in the industry. And so I think, you know, maybe some of that 500 mil go to there being more support for that. I mean, I think, you know, it should be just a basic thing that if you sign an artist, any age, but especially if you sign an artist who's young, and, you know, a vulnerable person, you know, a young woman, a queer person, you know, a person from a disadvantaged background, or, you know, who's at risk of discrimination in some way, that you should brief them on all of the support that there is for them there. Yeah. And, you know, because otherwise it's just so scary. And if something like that happens to you, you just have no idea who to talk to about it.
So you got your third record coming.
Yes.
How does it differ to your previous records? What can people expect? They've had a first taste with this new single. Like what have you got in store for people?
It's definitely, I mean, I think there's so much pressure for artists to reinvent themselves every album. And definitely, you know, if that's a natural progression as an artist, amazing. And often it is, obviously, because you don't stay the same person. But there is definitely this intense pressure of, oh, people get bored real quick. So you got to do that thing and then switch it up. And
yeah, I wonder if in some ways Taylor Swift's like created this like new shift of an expectation that pop stars are meant to shed their skin and put a new one.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because she actually, I think in one of the documentaries that she put out, she said this thing about she always felt pressure to reinvent herself. And there was this pressure, especially as a female artist, to continually reinvent, to keep them guessing, because they'll get really tired of you. Whereas, you know, again, I feel bad because I keep mentioning Ed Sheeran. I'm sorry, Ed, but like, you know, yeah. Ed Sheeran, every album wears the same t-shirt and jeans. And his live show is, I think, always the same.
He goes to Boris Johnson's hairdresser.
And he's had unbelievable success for every single album. You know, I think it's just like, which calculation sign am I going to use for this album, rather than I've got to change my hair, my outfit, the sound, the you know, the way I spell my name. I mean, like the amount of artists who have reduced their names to like one, like Marina and the Diamonds is now Marina, you know.
Did you know the band the OCs?
Yeah.
They changed the way their name is every single record.
Really? Every record, yeah.
There's one that's the OCS. There's one that's OHSEES. Like,
oh my gosh, it just keeps changing.
Yeah, literally every record they changed their name.
So I think, I don't know, for me, with this album, I was like, okay, how about the new era is actually connecting who I am day to day, Millie, with GIRLI, because my last album was very theatrical and very kind of high concept, and I just wanted to, I mean, I'm on this podcast with no makeup on and wearing, you know, jeans. I would never have done that on my last album, and I think
pink Pantone changed in your hair?
But you know what? There has been a change. I've gone back to my natural brown. But I think that was kind of an intentional thing as well, because it was like, well, for me, authenticity is like what I want to strive for more on this record. And the sound is definitely a lot more live sounding. I mean, I was in my teens towards the later end of the indie sleaze era, which was what a great time. And I love all those sounds. I love, you know, I've always loved guitar music, and, you know, this was the first ever record I've had live drums, which felt so significant, because I think, you know, that was another thing that was sort of, oh, you're a pop artist, you don't need live drums, you know. It's like, wait, but that's so fun. So yeah, I think that's the aim with this album, and definitely as you could probably tell, a lot more activism
Good.
embedded in.
We need more people that are campaigning whilst weighing on the campaign trail with our record. Because if you're not speaking up for what you believe in, that if it's embedded in the music, it's like, how can you join the dots of those things? That's so important.
Totally. I mean, that's what enrages me about massive artists who have platforms that are, you know, uncancelable.
Yeah.
Because I understand the fear if you're an up-and-coming artist, you know, and you're like, oh, gosh, I really want to talk about this thing, but like, what if I get hate for it online, or what if that, you know, I understand that more. But, and I've spoken about this online before, but when Taylor Swift doesn't say anything about ICE, about Palestine, about Trump, you're just like, but you're unshakable. Like the foundation and the audience that you have is.
Well, it was like Coldplay quietly cancelled their Russia dates when the war started in Ukraine.
Right.
And it's like, well, I get it, but surely this was a moment to. I mean, they have done things for Ukraine since, but it was that moment of, well, this should have been a significant thing that big band like pulls their dates, but maybe it's better that it isn't. But I think the knowing that there's costs involved and that people, like, there would have been a whole team of people expecting to go work, and like, could you have found a way of doing something that could have raised money for humanitarian causes?
Right.
And I'm constantly surprised by the silence of some people, and I think
it's loud.
We live in an era where it's so easy to make a statement.
It's so easy, and you know,
it's also so easy to make a bad statement. And like,
for sure.
I think being savvy and thinking about it and doing things like you've done, working with someone like Eliza, to make sure that what you're doing, like, I'm sure the last thing you wanted to do was cause anyone any more harm. Like to trigger anybody. Like,
right.
I'm sure you've gone through all of those kind of procedures.
Totally.
And also for yourself, like you've got to put yourself out there and stand behind it. Like, I'm sure this kind of conversation is not the light, breezy chat that you want to be having about your music.
All right. I'm used to it.
But it's like, I think what you're doing is really important. And I hope that some of the artists listening to this, they take a bit of that away. And I hope that some of the listeners maybe expect a bit more from their favorite artists as well, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I think the platform that you're given as a musician, if your music starts reaching loads of people, is not to be ignored. You know, I feel like the state that the world's in right now, we have to use these platforms for good.
Yeah, you're empaths. You create great music because of the world impacting you, and I think that you then build a connection to people, and it's a unique bridge that most people don't have. Like, you can have a conversation with your fan base that I never could, and I think that's really important, to nurture and not exploit, and be really mindful of, and like, it's a big thing. So I want to say, on behalf of music, thank you.
Thank you, music.